Father, what is divine justice? Divine justice means doing whatever brings peace and rest to your neighbor. For example, if you have something to divide with another person, do not give him merely half of what you have. Give him as much as he wants. Ask him, how many would you like? 2.5, 3. Take them. Give him the good ones and keep the damaged ones for yourself. Give him the greater share and keep the smaller one. Suppose, for example, that a sister brings us 10 plums. If, because of gluttony, I eat 8 of them and leave you only 2, I am treating you unjustly. If I say, since there are 2 of us, I will eat 5 and leave the other 5 for you, then I am practicing human justice. But if I see that you like plums and I eat only 1, then say to you, please, you eat the rest. I do not particularly care for them, and they upset my stomach. Then I am practicing divine justice. But what is human justice? Human justice is when, for example, you have something to divide with another person and you give him half while keeping the other half for yourself. Father, what place does human justice have in the spiritual life? Human justice is not meant for spiritual people. It serves only as a restraint for worldly people. A spiritual person is foolish if he relies on human justice alone, because compared with divine justice, human justice amounts to nothing. Even a worldly person who succeeds in this life by practicing only human justice will never attain true joy and inner rest. Suppose 2 brothers own 10 units of land. Human justice says that each should receive 5. Divine justice says that each should receive according to his need. If one brother has 7 children and the other has 2, or if one earns less than the other, then the one with the greater need should receive more. In such a case, it would be unjust for the second brother to receive as much as the first. But a worldly person does not take into account that his brother is struggling. He does not understand that the division he wants to make is unjust, because he does not think spiritually. You tell him, you must help your family understand and insist that they agree to give more to your brother who is in greater need. And he replies, why? I am not treating him unjustly. If he were a spiritual person, even if his wife and children objected, he should insist that they agree with what he had decided to give his brother. And if his brother said to him, you take 1 unit of land, he should accept it without saying anything, so that the brother who kept the rest might feel at peace. In every case, the gospel makes the best division. I greatly admire the nobility of Abraham. When Lot's shepherds began quarreling with Abraham's shepherds over grazing land, Abraham went to Lot and said, it is not good for us to quarrel, we are relatives. Which way do you want to go? Would you like to go this way or that way? Lot acted somewhat according to human reasoning and chose Sodom and Gomorrah because there was abundant greenery and good pasture there. And look what happened to him afterward. Abraham was moved by divine justice. He wanted Lot to be at peace, and he even rejoiced that Lot had chosen the better land. Father, what is the righteous judgment of God? The righteous judgment of God is his long-suffering, which contains both humility and love. God is perfectly just, but he is also exceedingly merciful, and his mercy overcomes his justice. I will give you an example so that you may understand. Suppose a person has never had the opportunity to hear about God. Such a person will not be judged according to the state in which he actually lived, but according to the state he would have reached had he known God. Otherwise, God would not be just. Divine justice has its own kind of mathematics. Sometimes 1 + 1 = 2, and at other times it equals 2 million. Father, how is divine justice applied to someone who sins? Human justice says, you sinned, you must be punished. Divine justice says, do you acknowledge your fault and repent? Then you are forgiven. You see, even under human law, a person who commits a crime is treated with leniency when he sincerely repents, comes forward on his own, and confesses what he has done, even though no one suspected him. And if human beings judge him with leniency, how much more will the righteous and most merciful God do so? We are in the hands of God. God watches us attentively and knows the heart of every person. He will not treat us unjustly. Since divine justice and divine recompense exist, and since God loves us, which is more important than anything else, no good deed a person performs is ever lost. For this reason, the person who demands to be vindicated by other people is completely misguided and utterly foolish. I have noticed that when a person is treated unjustly and responds according to divine justice, God vindicates him even in this life. I remember that after the war, while I was serving in the army, a general came to distribute medals. I was absent that day. When my name was called, a soldier from Thessaly stepped forward and took my medal. The other soldiers said nothing, because in those days a person could be imprisoned for making a false claim. After the general left, that soldier went into hiding, because the others would have beaten him severely. When I returned, he was afraid of me as well. He approached me from one side, then from the other, and finally said, "Forgive me, I did this and this." "You did well to take it," I told him. "What would I have done with it?" Afterward, he wore it during parades. 40 years later, the marshal of the First Army in Thessaly came here to the monastery and brought me a medal bearing the image of Alexander the Great. When I saw it, I felt like laughing. 40 years later! What impressed me was this. That soldier had been from Thessaly, and the marshal who brought me the medal was also from Thessaly. Do you see how things happen? When we demand justice for ourselves, in the end we lose both the things of this life and those which Christ is preparing for us in the life to come. Especially if, in seeking our own justice, we treat others unjustly. For the sake of things that are worth nothing, we lose the most important things, the eternal ones. And since the things of this life are of no real value anyway, what are we going to do with them? Father, what does it mean to have a right? The idea of rights belongs to worldly reasoning. The more worldly a person is, the more rights he believes he has. The more spiritual he becomes, the fewer rights he claims. A monk, especially, has only obligations. He has no right to anything. I mean that he should make no demands of anyone and should expect nothing from anyone. For a monk to demand rights in this life, after having renounced everything for the love of Christ, is completely wrong. By doing so, he insults Christ and monasticism. Lay people have many rights because they are lay people. But Christ keeps the rights of the monk and of every spiritual person for the life to come. Today, this concern for personal rights can be found in almost every young person, even among young monks. Some young monks do not know why they became monks or what monasticism means. For this reason, they have a sense of entitlement, a worldly spirit, a strange kind of reasoning, and human justice in every direction. This human justice sprang from the European spirit and has entered monasticism as well. In monastic life today, you often encounter this attitude. I do not harm my neighbor, and I do not want him to harm me. I do not treat him unjustly, so I am all right. Some say, I have done my work. I helped there, and now I am finished. I am all right. The rest is not my responsibility. I am leaving. I am going to my cell to attend to my spiritual duties. They do not consider whether the other person is frail, whether his head hurts and he cannot work, or whether he is working less because he attended an all-night vigil and is more tired. Or they say, this portion belongs to me, it is my right. They do not consider whether the other person is weaker, whether his body uses more energy, or whether he needs more food. Although they live in a spiritual environment, they retain a worldly mentality and thus become thoroughly worldly people. Do you know what it means to see spiritual people approaching everything in a worldly way? More or less, I have observed the following in many monks. They fast, pray, attend the services, and perform their obediences. They wear monastic clothing and follow a monastic schedule, but the way they approach life is worldly rather than spiritual. They are careful that no one should say anything to them, because they regard every correction as an injustice. In other words, they remain within the boundaries of worldly justice, and often they do not even reach that standard. Try speaking spiritually with people like that. They arrange everything themselves so that, in the end, Christ will not have to trouble himself by making any calculations for them. Although Christ watches every person, how much injustice he suffers, how much he sacrifices himself, and will reward him accordingly, they want to prepare their own account. I am saddened by the mentality I see in some young monks today. Human justice. How can human justice fit into the spiritual life? Even in worldly life, human justice often fails to resolve matters properly. How much less can it succeed in the spiritual life? When I lived in a Cenobitic monastery, everyone looked for opportunities to make some sacrifice. At work, at meals, in everything, this spirit prevailed. Each person thought first of the other. For this reason, they already experienced paradise in this life. Suppose someone was serving in the refectory. He would try to eat less so that more food would remain for his neighbor. Even if he himself was physically weak, he did not consider that. He did not ask who the other person was. He simply sacrificed himself. He did not even say, "It may harm him if he eats more." From the moment a monk tries to avoid being treated unjustly, to avoid becoming overly tired, or to make sure none of his labor is wasted, it is as though he does not believe that God exists, that there is another life, a future judgment, and divine recompense. And even if he works a little more, none of that labor is lost. Only the labor of animals goes unrewarded. And even those poor animals, although they suffer because of us, for after the first created people transgressed the commandment, all creation began to groan together with man, still sacrifice themselves for us. It is frightening. Look at how much wild animals suffer when they are wounded by hunters. Exhausted, with broken legs, unable to run, torn apart by larger animals, eaten alive, and they receive no reward at all. If man does not understand such things, then he is not truly human. God gave him a mind so that he might use it properly and find his way. I am not telling you to destroy yourselves through excessive labor. I am telling you to have nobility of soul. So, Father, you want our hearts to leap with eagerness to bring rest to the other person. Yes, because when you seek to bring rest to the other person and leave yourself entirely in God's hands, you do not become weary. And even if you do become tired, the moment you say, "I am tired," it is finished. You have lost your reward. Do you think Christ will reward you for something worthless? No. He may chastise you instead. Try to live this way as much as you can. This is the spiritual work you must undertake. Even if you practice asceticism, it will not benefit you if you fail to do this work, because a person who does not do it is operating on a different frequency from God. Then everything is lost, the prostrations, the fasting, all of it. I am not saying that these things should not be done, but no one should think he is spiritually sound merely because he performs them. Father, when can a person be called just? In the worldly sense, a just person is someone who judges everything according to human notions of right and fairness. But perfection is for a person to be just not according to human justice, but according to divine justice. Then God will bless him. When I never place my own I and my own interests at the center of my actions, I move God, so to speak, to send me His divine grace. Every form of human justice, even the most perfect, is always founded upon human principles. As long as human justice remains within a spiritual person, the spirit tries to cast it out like a foreign body. and the person struggles through spiritual ups and downs and becomes inwardly exhausted. But when he acquires divine justice, purification and divine illumination come. Father, if I tell someone who insists that he has been wronged, divine justice exists, will that help him? No, it is better to say, examine the matter spiritually according to the gospel. Because if you tell him, divine justice exists, he may believe that he is the one who has been wronged, when in fact he may be the one who has wronged someone else. Truly, my soul suffers over such things. I once knew a man who attended church regularly, fasted, and so on, and believed that he was living a spiritual life. Yet he would not give a single coin to a poor person, although he owned 5 apartments, received 2 salaries, and had no children. I said to him, "You have so many poor relatives. Why do you not give them something? What are you going to do with everything you have? Give something to widows and orphans." And do you know what he said to me? "What are you saying? Should I not collect rent from my own sister, who is a widow?" My blood boiled when I heard him. This is human justice. The children who are hungry are not mine, so I have no responsibility. Another person says, I am not treating them unjustly. God forbid that I should wrong anyone. In this way, they soothe their conscience through their own reasoning, but they do not possess true inner rest. Following human logic and relying upon worldly justice, they remain indifferent in the face of serious situations. How can they experience anything spiritual afterward? There are people who are capable of donating an entire house, yet if someone owes them 1 month's rent, they take him to court. How do you explain that? Father, is that human justice? It is not even human justice. It contains only a very small trace of it. On the one hand, they give someone 100,000 drachmas, and on the other, they quarrel with a taxi driver and take him to the police over 1,000 drachmas. How do you explain that? Could it be because they are not mentally well, Father? No, they are mentally well. Perhaps they give out of pride in order to feel satisfied with themselves. That is exactly what happens. They give a great deal, but with pride. They do it so that they themselves may be praised, not for the glory of God. They may even give away everything they own, yet still have no love. Today, a mistaken spirit prevails. Even spiritual people seek legal justice and then claim that they believe in God. My rights, your rights. May this gospel of logic, this strange logic, cease to exist. I do not want people to think I am a fool, they say. Do you not see how far Christians go in court cases? Even if they are right, they should not go to court. How much less should they go when they are not right? Because of such people, others lose their faith. They see someone who never goes to church or attends vigils, yet would never do such a thing, while another person who goes to church keeps vigil, and so on takes a poor man to court over a small amount of money he owes him, merely so that he may obtain what he calls justice. I said to someone who wanted to sue a man who owed him money, "Do you need the money? Do you have many children? Is your wife placing you in a difficult situation?" "No," he replied. "I am doing it only so that justice will be done for me." What can one say? This attitude also comes from a kind of education that was once given in certain spiritual circles. I remember an incident that occurred many years ago and which I can never forget. In a maternity hospital, there were nurses who had consecrated themselves to God. A sick child needed to undergo an examination involving radiation, and the doctor asked one of the nurses to help him. But not one of them went because they were afraid that the radiation might harm them. First of all, they had no reason to be afraid because they had consecrated their lives to God. If they had intended to marry, then perhaps they might have been afraid. But even if they had planned to marry and establish families, as spiritual people, they still ought to have made the sacrifice. Normally, they should have competed with one another over who would go first. In the end, another nurse who was not living a spiritual life and was even considering marriage felt compassion for the child and ran to help the doctor. What is worse than all this is that such people do not feel any pang of conscience. Instead, they say to themselves, "These things are not for us. We are devoted to spiritual matters." They may even think, "That person finds fulfillment in sacrificing herself, while I find fulfillment in preserving my peace." Sometimes they even judge the person who sacrifices herself, saying that she lacks a spiritual state. But Christ finds rest where there is nobility, a spirit of sacrifice and ascetic struggle performed in secret. Father, when you see another person facing difficulties, should you not help him regardless of your own condition? Of course. But I have noticed that a worldly mentality has been cultivated even among many spiritual people. They have created their own gospel, a gospel made according to their own standards, and they say, "A Christian must preserve his dignity. He must not appear foolish." In other words, they confront everything with worldly logic and worldly justice. "This is what I am entitled to," they say. "I am not treating him unjustly, and I do not want him to treat me unjustly either." By speaking this way, they reassure themselves that they are right. In such a person, you can see every kind of right, but all of them are worldly rights. He has no nobility of soul, no spirit of sacrifice, nothing at all. He has created his own gospel and has nothing in common with God. Can divine grace possibly overshadow such a person? While I was doing my military service, there was an Air Force telegraph operator who came to our unit to collect messages. We knew each other. He was a theologian and even delivered sermons. But everyone called him the Jesuit because he not only refused to make any sacrifice, he would not even perform the smallest service. Once I said to him, "Since you are going to the airfield anyway, please give these messages to so-and-so." "No," he replied. "I brought my own messages. Let him go and deliver his own." In this way, he reassured himself that he had not treated the other person unjustly. But Christ does not say, "If someone asks you to go 1 mile, go 2. He says, "If someone compels you to go 1 mile, go 2. And he does not say, "If someone asks for your coat, give him your shirt as well." He says, "If someone takes your coat, give him your shirt as well." Christ says these things, yet this man, who regarded himself as spiritual, would say, "I carried my own messages. Let him carry his." It is as though he were saying, "What? If someone asks me to go 1 mile, should I be foolish enough to go 2? How can the grace of God come near such a person? But when someone puts the words of Scripture into practice, and when another compels him to go 1 mile, he goes even farther, then Christ begins to work. The person who compelled him is spiritually changed and begins to feel remorse. "Look at that. I forced him to go 1 mile, and he went even farther. What goodness!" If Christ had possessed the same human logic that many spiritual people have today, he would never have left his heavenly throne, come down to earth, suffered and been crucified by us pitiful human beings. Yet hidden within what appeared, in human terms, to be his failure was the salvation of all humanity. But what did he endure in order to save us? They went so far as to strike him and say, "Prophesy, who struck you?" The Jews were playing a cruel guessing game with Christ. Do you know how deeply saddened I was as a child when I saw children playing that game in which one child was struck and had to guess who had hit him? And now they were playing that game with Christ. Prophesy, who struck you? Smack. Oh, what a dreadful thing. And we ask for a Christianity without crucifixion, wanting to pass directly to the resurrection. We fashion Christianity and monasticism according to our own desires. We do not want to be deprived of anything. But in order to seek and attain what is beyond nature, we must also live in a way that transcends nature.